Cries of anguish from family grieving the loss of Amara, known as Jerica to her sisters, Banks, and her 4- and 5-year-old daughters. Banks was last seen Saturday the 8th when her sister Tamika says she dropped her off at her apartment.
She got in the house. I ain't pulled off until I saw a light turned off, and I didn't even pull her right exactly off. You know, I waited a moment. I thought she was fine. The next day, I'm thinking she knows that she just needs some rest, needs some time to herself.
It was shortly after a neighbor says she woke up to shouting and heard a woman scream, "Don't kill me, don't kill me." The next day, Banks's other sister went to visit her and found she was missing.
I banged on the door, I knocked on the windows, I yelled her name, still no Jerica.
It began with a simple 911 call, a noise complaint from a concerned neighbor. But what followed was a cascade of errors and missed opportunities that would lead to the haunting disappearance of a mother and her 2 young daughters, casting a shadow over Milwaukee. Could they have been saved? Could a quicker response have changed everything? For those who loved Jerica Banks and her children, that question will forever remain unanswered. Welcome to True Crime Files Edition. Today's story follows the tragic disappearance of Jerica Banks and her daughters, Zanaya and Kamaria, in a case marked by devastating mistakes and missed chances. Amara Jerica Banks, who went by the name Jerica, was born on March 14, 1993, in Milwaukee, and was adopted by Acklin and Valeria Banks at the age of 5. She was raised in a big, close-knit family and quickly became known for her kind and selfless nature. Jerica excelled at school, loved music, and was a talented violinist, graduating with honors from Milwaukee School of the Arts. But above all, Jerica was meant to be a mother. By 26, Jerica was raising 3 young children, 5-year-old Zanaya, 4-year-old Kamaria, and her baby son, Arzel Jr. The 2 girls were inseparable, both witty and bright, and they adored their little brother. Jerica's life revolved around her kids, and she worked tirelessly to provide for them, especially after her relationship with Arzel Jr, the father of 2 of her children, started to unravel. By early 2020, it was clear that Jerica wanted nothing more to do with Arzel Sr., despite his belief that they would someday marry. They no longer lived together, and she was working extra shifts at Froter Hospital, saving for a new apartment to start fresh. Sadly, that new beginning would never come. On January 23, 2020, Jerica's 21-month-old son, Arzel Jr., who had a history of asthma, began showing signs of respiratory distress. That evening, Jerica, who had plans with her sister, left her son in the care of Arzel Sr., trusting him to watch over the child closely. Arzel Sr. had been staying with them after a fire at his own apartment. The following morning, Arzel Sr. got the children ready for school. When he attempted to drop Arzel Jr. off at daycare, a staff member noticed the toddler's labored breathing and advised that he was too sick to attend. He dropped the girls at school as usual and then called off work to stay with Arzel Jr., later telling detectives that the child was struggling to breathe, but that it wasn't anything unusual. Around 3 p.m., he placed his son, who was making slow, gasping sounds, in the car and drove to pick up the girls. By the time he arrived, the little boy was slumped against the door. A daycare employee, alarmed at Arzel Jr.'s condition, urged Arzel Sr. to take him to the hospital immediately. However, instead of heading directly to the hospital, Arzel Sr. drove around for another hour, stopping to buy snacks before finally arriving at Columbia St. Mary's Hospital. By then, it was too late. Arzel Jr. had stopped breathing, and a nurse couldn't find a pulse. The toddler's sudden death left Jerica devastated when she received the news at work. The medical team informed her that her son had passed due to complications related to viral bronchitis and bronchiolitis, conditions that might have been managed with timely medical intervention. As required, medical staff notified Milwaukee police of the child's sudden death. Homicide detectives arrived at the hospital to interview both Arzel Sr. and Jerica. Detectives questioned Jerica about any recent incidents of violence at home or injuries to her son. She responded with a firm no, though she did acknowledge that there had been violence in the past. In 2018, Arzel Sr. had been arrested in a domestic violence case involving Jerica. However, prosecutors ultimately decided not to file charges, leaving Jerica with few legal options to protect herself from him. At Arzel Jr.'s funeral on February 7, 2020, Jerica's grief was mixed with simmering anger toward Arzel Sr., whom she blamed for her son's tragic death. Those who attended could sense her frustration and heartbreak, but they could never have anticipated the nightmare that was yet to come. In the early hours of February 8th, a neighbor in Jerica's apartment complex woke up to the sound of a loud thump against the wall, followed by Jerica's desperate screams. The neighbor heard a man yelling accusations of infidelity and sensed something was horribly wrong. Calling 911, she told the operator, "You can hear her screaming. He over there beating the hell out of this girl."
I hear like loud thumping, and I hear a lady screaming, "Help, help, help." I hear a man yelling, and then I hear her saying, "But I didn't even do anything." That big picture window, that would be my living room. That would be her living room.
Riri Lee lives next door to Banks. She told 12 News she called 911 around 1:51 a.m. Saturday, February 8th, when she heard fighting.
I called 911 when I heard her screaming, "Help, help." I come back, look out the window. He's pulling her from that door right there. He's pulling her from over there back into their apartment. I put my ear back to the wall. The last thing I heard her say was, "Please don't kill me." And then it just got silent.
The 911 operator, Kristen St. Pierre, documented the call but omitted critical details, misreporting the source of the sounds as coming from a building to the south, even though the neighbor said it was from the north. Because of this error, the police response was delayed and confusing. Officers Shahriar Salati and Nicholas Kuchta, who were among the few squads available that night, were dispatched at 2 a.m., nearly 10 minutes after the call. They took additional time checking a prior warrant and waiting for their body cameras to finish downloading before leaving the station at 2:15 a.m. By the time they arrived at the complex, 24 minutes had passed since the initial 911 call. They drove around with their windows down, listening for signs of distress, but they never left their squad car. They parked for 10 minutes, hoping to spot something unusual, but no follow-up was done to confirm the location or to reach out to the caller. After circling the area without seeing any lights on or hearing further sounds, they left at 2:35 a.m. Jerica's last chance of rescue disappeared with them into the night. The next day, Jerica's family grew increasingly worried. Calls and texts went unanswered, which was uncharacteristic of her, even in her grief. By February 9th, with no word from Jerica, her family reported her and the children missing. As hours turned into days, Jerica's loved ones grew frustrated with the police response. Her brother, David Fields Jr., expressed his anger, feeling that officers didn't take the case seriously and missed their opportunity to save her. An internal investigation would later reveal that the initial 911 call was mishandled and that errors by the 911 operator and responding officers had likely delayed a crucial response. 4 days later, Milwaukee police notified local media about the missing family. Another 2 days passed before an Amber Alert was issued for Zanaya and Kamaria on February 15th. By then, precious time had slipped away. On February 15th, Arzel Sr. turned up in Memphis, Tennessee, where he confessed to his father that he had killed Jerica and her daughters. Arzel's father contacted Milwaukee police, revealing his son's horrific admission. When confronted by detectives, Arzel Sr. recounted the events of February 8th. He admitted that following an argument after their son's funeral, he strangled Jerica in their apartment. In a twisted rationale, he claimed he didn't want the girls to live in a world without their mother, so he took their lives as well. He wrapped the bodies in an air mattress, transported them to his old apartment's garage, and set them on fire. On February 16th, police located the bodies of Jerica, Zanaya, and Kamaria in a garage less than 5 miles from their home. Investigators found charred remains with pieces of a white t-shirt, the same memorial shirts from Arzel Jr.'s funeral, still visible among the ashes. The discovery shattered the family and community, who demanded accountability for the missed opportunities to save them.
This is where police say Banks and her daughters were found dead. You can see a small bouquet of flowers left just right outside the garage. Family members tell me it all feels like a nightmare. Crippling heartbreak.
I just wish he was here. Oh.
Followed by a desperate prayer for strength.
God asks that you would touch this family when the crowd have left, and when the dust have settled from us.
Tamika Smith can barely find the words.
It's so heartbreaking. I don't even know what to do.
She learned Sunday her sister, 26-year-old Amara Jerica Banks, and her 2 nieces, 5-year-old Zanaya Ivory and 4-year-old Kamaria Banks, were murdered.
Hate the fact that I never see her talk to my sister again. And it's hurt me so bad because me and my sister were so close.
Police say 25-year-old Arzel Ivory is the man who killed them. He was arrested Saturday. Family says he was Banks' ex-boyfriend and Zanaya's father. He and Banks had just buried their infant son, who family says died from health complications.
She was a very private person though, like she wasn't like an outspoken person, wild person. I'm just so hurt.
Banks and her daughters had been missing for a week before an Amber Alert went out. Video from News Chopper 12 shows the scene Sunday near 47th and Burleigh, where police say their bodies were found in a garage.
She didn't deserve this. She really didn't. How can you be so evil?
The loss leaving family wondering how their hearts will heal.
She always been in my heart, my prayers. Today I'm gone and not here anymore. I just had to live with it.
The deaths of Jerica Banks and her daughters sent shockwaves through Milwaukee, sparking grief and anger. The haunting question remained: how could this have happened? How did the 911 call go unheeded? Why did it take days before authorities recognized the severity of the situation? An internal investigation revealed multiple failures in the response. The initial 911 call had been mishandled, and critical details were omitted. The responding officers, unaware of the severity, had driven away without fully investigating. These mistakes were acknowledged, but for Jerica's loved ones, the admissions brought little comfort. Despite admitting to strangling his ex-girlfriend and daughters to death and attempting to hide what he did, Arzel Ivory Sr. initially pleaded not guilty to 3 counts of first-degree homicide by reason of insanity. For an insanity plea to work, however, the defense needs to prove the defendant didn't understand right from wrong when committing the crime, which clearly wasn't the case with Arzel Ivory Sr. In the end, to avoid the trial, on July 16, 2021, Arzel changed his plea to guilty. He received the mandatory sentence of life in prison without the possibility of parole.
The man who killed 2 children and their mother will spend the rest of his life in prison. Fox 6's Brett Lemoyne joining us live now from Sojourner Family Peace Center, where the victim's family is reacting to today's sentencing.
Yeah, and Stephanie, prosecutors called this the worst case they have ever encountered. Arzel Ivory strangled all 3 victims and then burned their bodies. It's life in prison for Arzel Ivory.
I know what I did has affected the world. I know I can't change anything by what I say, but I am truly sorry, and I regret everything I did.
Speaking publicly for the first time at his sentencing for killing 3 members of his family, Ivory's attorney asked for the possibility of release after 40 years behind bars. That request denied.
I have heard what the prosecutor said about what I did.
On February 16th of last year, the bodies of Amara Jerica Banks and her 2 young girls were found in a garage near 47th and Burleigh. Prosecutors say Ivory strangled all 3 and burned their bodies.
Evil is being sentenced here today, and that evil is you.
Investigators say Ivory previously had an argument with Banks because she blamed him for the death of their son, Arzel Ivory Jr. The boy's funeral was days earlier. The 21-month-old died following asthma complications and viral bronchitis. Ivory was eventually found in Memphis after a phone call to police from Ivory's father. In September, a doctor ruled Ivory's plea of not guilty by reason of mental disease or defect would not be supported. In April, he pleaded guilty to 3 counts of first-degree intentional homicide. Shortly after Friday's sentencing, a spokesman for the victim's family read a statement.
He is being held accountable for the horrors he inflicted on people we love.
And inside Milwaukee's Sojourner Family Peace Center, a family still processing tragedy after tragedy.
No parent should have to bury a child, and to bury not only your child, but your grandchildren too.
The victim's family plans to commission a stained glass window to be installed here at Sojourner. It will depict Banks and her children walking toward the sunlight as a way to honor them.
The fates of Jerica, Zanaya, and Camaria Banks will forever serve as a tragic reminder of the consequences of inaction and missed opportunities. For Jerica's parents, Acklin and Valeria, the loss is unimaginably painful. Not only did they lose 3 beloved grandchildren and a cherished daughter, but this is also the second daughter they have had to bury. Half of their family has been torn away, leaving a void that will never be filled. To Jerica's family and friends, we extend our deepest condolences. She was a loving mother, a daughter, a friend, and so much more. Her warmth, kindness, and dedication to her children will never be forgotten. Jerica, Zanaya, and Camaria will be missed by all who knew and loved them, and their memory will live on as a reminder of the need for compassion and vigilance in times of crisis. What do you think could have changed the outcome of this tragic case? Should authorities be held accountable for these missed chances, or is this an example of a system that simply failed? We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and if you found this story meaningful, please like, comment, and subscribe to support our channel. Until next time, stay safe and look out for one another.